Hello, you're listening to a new episode of Popcorn Podcast with Leigh and Tim, where we're discussing Matthew Vaughn's Argylle.
I'm Timmy Fland, movie buff.
And I'm Leigh Livingstone, entertainment journalist.
And we love to talk all things movies. Now, in Argylle, reclusive author Ellie Conway is swept up into a world of espionage when the plots of her fictional spy novels begin to mirror the covert actions of a real spy organisation. Accompanied by a mysterious spy named Aidan, Ellie races across the world to stay one step ahead of the killers as her imagined world and her real one begin to blur.
Argylle is directed by Matthew Vaughn, who of course has brought us the Kingsman franchise and Kick-Ass. It's from a screenplay by Jason Fuchs, who has brought us Wonder Woman.
Argylle stars Bryce Dallas Howard, Sam Rockwell, Bryan Cranston, Catherine O'Hara, Henry Cavill, Dua Lipa, John Cena, Ariana DeBose, Samuel Jackson, Sophia Boutella, Richard E. Grant, and Claudia Schiffer's cat, Chip.
And Matthew Vaughn's, because they're married.
That's right, which I know we mentioned on our episode where you spoke to Matthew Vaughn, the director of this film, that I was coming to terms with a lot of facts that came at me this week, which was the fact that Matthew Vaughn is married to Claudia Schiffer and that their cat is in the film. But I found out about the cat first, and then you're like, oh, by the way, they're married. I was like, hold on a minute, I just need to sit down.
There's so many meta twists and turns with a Matthew Vaughn spy film, and we'll get into them a bit later in the episode. But let's just begin with an overall picture of Argylle. You know, two words are always used to describe Matthew Vaughn's films. I think they fit very well here too. That is music and mayhem.
Yes.
It's from the twisted mind of Matthew Vaughn for a reason. This film is very twisty, turny, lots and lots of ins and outs and hidden gems and clues, and folds in on itself, and it's and there's a big mystery behind the author of the book that the film's based on too.
Yeah, so there is a really fascinating backstory to the film surrounding what you just said, the unknown author of their unpublished novel that the film is based on. Now, you came into an insight that this unknown author who doesn't want to reveal who they are, they're apparently a female and they're Australian.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. And what that means is that this adaptation isn't traditional in any sense, because the text that the film's based on, no one's ever read other than the filmmakers, presumably.
And their agent, I guess.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of talk about this being a marketing ploy for the film. Like, Ellie Conway doesn't exist. And technically, I guess she doesn't, because it is a pen name. I'm sure it's a pen name, because there is no Ellie Conway, Australian author.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to find out who it is. But Matthew Vaughn has said unequivocally that it is a real person, and that she will come out of the shadows when she wants to. But at the moment, she didn't want to. But all the hype is kind of putting her in a position where she feels like she has to, maybe.
I know who it is.
Me.
It's you. I was going to say it's actually Claudia Schiffer's cat, Chip. That's the author.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't sound all that ridiculous given the film that has been delivered here, right? So, fuck, anything's possible.
In the context of a Matthew Vaughn film, it could happen. Yeah. Oh, gosh. We're not going to reveal anything in this episode because our episodes are non-spoiler. We always try and do that. But there are quite a few plot twists in the second half of the film. There's a big one, and then there's a few smaller ones. And some people have criticised that it can get very convoluted.
Yes.
How did you feel about the third act?
Oh, I didn't enjoy this movie.
Yeah, I was going to ask you because you enjoyed Kingsman, but you did not like Kingsman: The Golden Circle.
It's a film that irates me to this day, just even saying it out loud, which is just so bizarre.
I'm sorry to trigger you.
It is triggering because you're right, I love the first Kingsman movie. I love the prequel film that they did with Harris Dickinson, The King's Man. I thought that was great fun. And I am such a fan of Matthew Vaughn as a visual director, and we'll talk about him a little later in the episode. So then when Kingsman Golden Circle came about, I was like, what the fuck is this? This is awful.
And even Pedro Pascal couldn't save it for you?
No, like it was an unsavable, unsalvageable film in my eyes. And I feel like Argylle is kind of part of that failed Matthew Vaughn film world for me. And I'm really, really upset that I didn't enjoy this, but I thought it was a bit of a disaster.
Right, yeah. And I don't think you're alone in that sentiment looking at the online chatter about this film as it's being released. I had a great time though. It is bloody silly. Let's just say that. It is ridiculous. It's over the top. It's outrageous. But it's pretty to look at. It's fun to go along with. I will say the thing that got me was the runtime. It's too long.
Yeah.
It could have done with a few chops, for sure.
It was so goddamn long. And you know this, Leigh. When I go to the cinema, that is almost the only time that I can really switch off from the outside world. My phone is away. I never, ever look at my phone or my watch in a film. Never. Not even in Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon, which is 3.5 hours. And that is a long fucking movie, but that is brilliant cinema. Go check it out. You can stream it on Apple TV Plus right now. But I checked my watch in this movie and it still had 1 whole hour to go. And I was so bored. I was so bored.
No.
I was like, no, please don't make me sit here for another hour. So I am excited for you that you enjoyed this movie genuinely. I don't want to bring people down with my sentiments of the film. I'm really happy for you that you had a good time.
I had a really good time, and it's by no means a perfect film. Okay, it does drag on, as I said, and I felt it as well. I felt it in the third act. In between the big action sequences, I was like, ugh. But then one of those action sequences would happen and I was so enthralled by it and laughing along, and it's ridiculous, let me tell you. Some of them are really cheesy and over the top, but I loved it. Yes. It was really entertaining. And that's all Matthew Vaughn wants. He wants to entertain. He is the ultimate popcorn flick director.
Yes.
Okay? He's all about commercialism. He wants his movies to sell. He wants people to have a good time. He's none of this artistry wankery. He just wants people to have a good time, make it look good, and make a film that he fucking wants to make.
Exactly. It's stylized by design. Everything about what he does put on that celluloid is considered. I just feel like the substance with the story paired with his really unique flair just didn't land. Yes, there were about 702 plot twists in this movie. They just ended up literally doing whatever the fuck they wanted. So, and that's like, go for it, be my guest. But it felt like the pace of the movie, despite those high octane set pieces, just had no urgency behind them. And we just sitting in scenes for so long, and I was just like begging for it to carry forward.
But I just didn't mind it whenever Sam Rockwell and Bryce Dallas Howard were on the screen, which was the whole time.
Yeah.
That's another thing to mention as well. You know, people are going to go into it looking at the posters thinking Dua Lipa and Henry Cavill are the main characters. They're in it for about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Henry Cavill a bit longer, but...
Yeah, maybe 10 minutes, but he only has 2 lines. Look, can we talk about this for a minute? Because as we've already identified, 500 million plot twists, like we can't really dive into the story here because...
Hang on. I just have to say, we went from 702 plot twists to 500 million plot twists. Can we fact check that and get some consistency for our listener, please?
Sometimes the truth should never get in the way of a good story. And maybe the true number somewhere in the middle there. But there is a lot of movie that you don't see in the trailer. Basically, the trailer is one big fat lie that is both exciting and annoying. Because you're sold one movie and getting another, how did you feel about that isolated experience?
I enjoyed it because trailers do my head in these days that they give away too much.
Yeah.
You watch a trailer. You know, I sit down with my husband and I go, let's watch this film. What's it like? Let's put on the trailer and see if we might like it. And you end up watching the whole freaking movie in the trailer. And I was like, well, we don't need to watch it now because I just saw the whole thing.
Yeah, just saw it in 2.5 minutes, or some trailers like 3.5 minutes now, which is just way too long.
No.
Okay, so you were pleasantly surprised. You were like, okay, this isn't what I was expecting. I'm going along for the ride then.
Yep, I went for it.
Great.
Give me Sam Rockwell. He can be my main character anytime.
Look, he is so good in anything that he throws himself at, and he's clearly having a lot of fun in the role of Aiden.
But I will tell you, I saw the film twice, 2 nights in a row.
Yes.
Right?
Which was a telltale sign, Leigh, that you liked this movie for me.
Yes, because I don't do that.
No?
If I've had to watch the film because I have an interview with one of the cast members or the director or whatever, I then generally won't go and see it again at the premiere because I've already seen it. Time is of the essence. You know, I'm a working mum now. I've got so much on my plate. So
Super
I
mum.
just don't have the time. Yeah. Well, thank you.
It's true.
I just don't have the time or the patience. There's so many movies to see and so little time.
I just don't have the patience.
So I move on to the next one.
Yeah.
But I wanted to see this one again and I went and saw it a second time. So yeah, it does tell you that I enjoyed it. And what was fun actually seeing it the second time was I could see all the clues that Matthew Vaughn left in plain sight.
Okay.
And if you're paying attention and you're a fan of spy films, you'll probably figure out the plot twists pretty quickly. But I didn't try. I just went with it and I had a good time.
Okay. I do see, although I will never watch this movie again, but I do see the value. I won't. I'm just being honest with you. I do see the value in rewatch. I'm happy for you. Go for the trifecta. I do see the value in rewatching because there would be a lot to uncover. You're right. And that can be really exciting, especially if you're a fan of the spy genre, which, you know, Matthew Vaughn throws on its head here. What I will say about the story, which I think is, you know, walking the line in terms of spoiler territory, but we do find ourselves going from the fictitious world to the real world and they sort of blur together. But one of the things that really irated me about that journey and progression of the story was a device that Matthew Vaughn used that was so over. I understand why it was used, but it irritated me, was that you were literally in the head of Ellie Conway and you could see her blinking her eyes like constantly. I got so annoyed by that. Right. Did that worry you showing up all the time? And I felt like you've shown us once or twice, we get it. You don't need to keep showing us in this way. It really pulled me out.
Right, yeah. It was like the device is that she's blinking across the screen.
Yes.
Yeah. You're in her head. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
It just made me think like, oh my God, is the camera dirty? Is the projector dirty? Is there a bug flying across the screen? It distracted me from the events every time. So yeah, clearly this movie I-rated me.
One thing I want to talk about with the story before we move on is Jason Fuchs, who did the Wonder Woman story.
Yeah.
He wrote the screenplay for this one. But Matthew Vaughn was very much involved. I actually, as we mentioned, I interviewed Matthew Vaughn and you can watch that interview on YouTube now. He mentioned that he added in a few lines such as the whirly bird catches the worm. Because he invents this dance called the whirly bird for the film and it happens a few times throughout the film. And so there's this really cheesy line in there which is very emblematic of the dialogue throughout the film.
Yes.
And he admitted in our interview that the writer didn't want to use that. He was like, no. And Matthew Vaughn is just very much making the film he wants to make. You know, everyone else be damned. This is the way I'm going to make it. So I wonder, you know, Matthew Vaughn usually writes his own films, the ones that he directs, like the Kingsman films. He's very much the central writer and he has a team, Jane Goldman sometimes. And this one he didn't. He's handed over the writing reins to someone else largely. Do you think that made a difference?
Huge difference. An absolutely massive difference because he's coming into a story where he tells stories in a particular way. And I feel like with his inclination to go really high energy and octane, which definitely comes to life in the action sequences, where he wasn't able to keep up that ferocious energy was based on the dialogue and the plot and how it played out, but they weren't his words. There wasn't his story and his script. And I feel like one of the initial issues with how this film plays out from a writing perspective is that my understanding is that the adaptation of this unreleased novel, they just took inspiration from the characters, just springboarded them into their own sort of story. So it's a concerning fact given the result of the end product. Don't mess with the source material, assuming it's any good, but no one's read it yet. So I don't know whether it still would have come out as clunky as it was, even if they lent more into the novel that this mysterious Australian author actually delivered.
So it's like he's taken this IP and twisted it and commercialized it and marketed it for his own purposes, really.
Yeah, and there's an imbalance between Jason's words and Matthew Vaughn's way of directing it. So, yeah, I think you've nailed it. In terms of my experience with the movie, I think they were at odds with each other.
Here's a random little tidbit for you.
Please.
Jason Fuchs is an actor. He's done a lot of acting work, right? One of his earliest roles was Marvin in Flipper, the Flipper movie with Paul Hogan and Elijah Wood.
In the mid-90s?
Yeah, he was the little kid with glasses that didn't talk.
Oh, well, maybe he also shouldn't write.
Oh, Tim.
That was mean.
Yikes.
Like, I appreciate what he was trying to do here, and it's a pretty inventive, wild script. It just didn't land for me, is all I'm saying.
It's a tough line to walk, I guess, that tongue-in-cheek piss take of the spy genre, if you will, which is it's Matthew Vaughn's whole thing, really. Yeah, maybe it didn't walk the line as well here, but I mean, I really should have, because on one hand, you've got this fantasy world where they can go really over the top with the spy genre and make it really fun and really outrageous and just poke fun at the whole thing. And then when they hit to the real world, I think the issue people are having is that it's also quite cheesy and over the top.
Yes.
So it didn't bring that tonal shift in enough.
Yeah, 100%. That's a note that I have for this film, is that it really, really works, that heightened sort of reality in the fictitious world, in the book world, when those pages, quote unquote, are coming to life. But then when reality blurs in with the fictitious world, it still lives in that space, and it doesn't quite work for me, despite being a real fan of how Matthew Vaughn brings his visual storytelling to life. It's kind of at odds with what it's trying to sell you at the beginning versus the middle versus the end. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's no surprise that Matthew Vaughn has such a keen interest in this genre anyway. The man that he believed was his father for most of his life is the actor Robert Vaughn from The Man from U.N.C.L.E. fame, the original Man from U.N.C.L.E. fame.
Oh, what with all the facts and tidbits?
He believed that man was his father for most of his life. Turns out he's not. Oh. And his real dad is actually a godson of King George VI and has the last name De Vere Drummond. So his actual last name is De Vere Drummond.
Oh my God. You've just really, if you go on all Ancestry.com on Matthew Vaughn for this episode.
I've gone down the rabbit hole of Matthew Vaughn. Here's another one for you.
Please.
Robert Vaughn, his fake father, is a distant cousin of Sydney Sweeney.
Whoa. Okay.
Matthew Vaughn is like Zack Snyder or Wes Anderson or one of those auteurs who have a really distinct, instantly recognizable visual style. And like those directors, if it's not your cup of tea, you won't like it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. But you do like Wes Anderson and Zack Snyder to a point.
I love directors who basically throw caution to the wind and do whatever they feel is right in terms of interpreting art onto the screen. You can throw Baz Luhrmann into the same mix of directors that you listed out before. They don't always land as a cohesive product depending on what project you're looking at, and you either love or hate them, you're right. But I admire that way, that they challenge the tropes of filmmaking and do something different for themselves and the audience.
I mean, Matthew Vaughn does that. He very much suits his own taste.
He does.
He's very considerate of commercialism in everything he does, though, which I guess if you're a cynic, you could get up on your high horse about that he's not a real artist or whatever. But I think he is. He really considers branding and marketing. You know what I mean? You look at the Kingsman films and the logos involved in the Kingsman and how everything's got a very distinct look, and he's creating these shops. Like, you could sell so much merchandise for a Matthew Vaughn film.
Absolutely.
Like, endless. And in this one, you've got toys, you've got books, you've got the Argylle symbol, you've got the Argylle logo. He's done the same thing. So he very much considers the marketing and the commercialism, and people might turn their noses up at that, but I actually think it's very clever.
Making movies is about making money, of course, and you need those big movies that make money in order to make those more art house considered films that challenge you in different ways. So yeah, there is definitely and always will be a space for films like Matthew Vaughn's, and it's fun. It is fun, and he does have a real distinct visual style, not only in how the film presents from an action perspective, but then how that can be pulled into the commercial space. Like, I reckon you're going to see a lot of cat bags with the window out the back that of the design of this movie. Even the glass tumblers with the diamond symbol that you see peppered throughout the whole movie. Like there's a really nice thing. You go, ooh, I like that. I could buy that.
Although animal advocacy groups are up in arms actually about that cat bag. They say it's not very good for the cats.
Oh, is that right? Oh, that's not good.
I mean, look, Matthew Vaughn, he almost just doesn't give a toss, but he does, because he is a huge movie fan himself. He wants people to have a good time and enjoy themselves without getting too bogged down in the artistic detail. He just simply wants it to look cool and entertain. As I said, there's none of that wanky artistry, deeper meaning stuff of his films. And I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily.
No, not at all. One of the things that I really like about him as a director is how, and you mentioned this at the top of the episode, is how he uses music within his style. It's front and center, how it speaks to the action on the screen. It tells the story, helps project that to the audience. One of the coolest things about this film is how its music kind of marries up with the score, that whole disco fun feel. So it's definitely its own character. As much as his visual style, his audible style is front and center in all his films.
And that's by Lorne Balfe. Designed by Lorne Balfe. And the disco ups the energy of the film for sure. It gives it that kinetic feel that Matthew Vaughn films are known for. And you have a physical response to it. Like, you're bouncing in your seat or you lean forward during those action scenes, even though they're silly. I mean, there's a really big set piece in this one. We don't want to spoil it, but it involves really colourful smoke screens, like a dance in smoke screens. And it reminded me of the Kingsman films when the heads explode and coloured smoke come out of them. Like, where is that coming from? But it looks cool.
It looks cool. And you asked him that exact question in your interview with him. And he goes, I don't know. It's just for my mind.
Yeah, exactly. But it had me wondering, like, what is the difference between seeing something silly and unrealistic and rolling your eyes, as you probably did, or seeing it and thinking, this looks so cool, I'm having such a good time?
I'm not going to say that a lot of these set pieces didn't look cool. Was I having a good time? No. And was there a mix of eye rolling and also quietly applauding? Yes, because I can appreciate the skill it takes to pull off something like that and to take a risk. And it is fun and silly, and you do have to surrender yourself to it. I guess when these amazing, absolutely ridiculous things took place on screen, I just wasn't sold on the story. And so that just took me out of me enjoying it enough.
So it's the story for you.
It's definitely the story and the pace of it all, and that it just felt so disjointed.
I think the difference between those two things, between rolling your eyes and just going with it, it's knowing the intention is to send up the spy genre. And somehow people still expect Matthew Vaughn to be taking it seriously, and he just doesn't. Has he overstayed his welcome in this style? And does he need to bang on a new drum? Maybe. But actually, he is going to. If you listen to my interview with him, and please do check that out, he talks about the upcoming projects and the different genres that he wants to play in, and I'm really excited for that.
It does excite me too, and I don't know how he's going to pull it off, but somehow he'll deliver something that, again, we've never really seen before within that genre that he references.
Going back to the music just for one sec before we move on, he managed to get hold of the last Beatles song, which was only released a couple of months ago. So before it was released, he was approached by Giles Martin, who is the son of producer George Martin. And he has this song that John Lennon had begun on a demo tape. And using state-of-the-art technology, he and Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr finished the song. And the result is Now and Then.
Yes.
Which is a gorgeous song.
It really is a gorgeous song. And it's used quite a lot across the life of the film because it tells the story of the titular characters and sort of has a truth behind it. I believe it's in the film for some 10 minutes, which is a significant amount of time for a song to be present in any film. So it obviously worked for what Matthew Vaughn was after. And I haven't listened to it in isolation, but that's what I'm going to do this weekend because it's a good song.
It is a really good song, and it stands out from the other disco-feeling tracks in the film, but somehow fits with the central relationship at its different stages so well. I mean, Matthew Vaughn said it was perfect for the film and they didn't need to do any edits to make it fit. Like, it just fit perfectly. It was like it was written for the film.
And there's one particular scene towards the end where it shows up where it's kind of juxtaposed with what's happening visually on the screen in some way, yet it just works together so well. So I'll give it to Vaughn in that sense that he does marry music and action really, really beautifully.
Let's talk about the CGI now. And I think we're going to be on the same page about this. It can be pretty terrible.
Speaking of overstaying your welcome, the CGI does be like, hey, over here, I'm CGI. Look at me. Look at me. How good do I? Yes.
Is it intentional though? Is it intentionally bad CGI? I don't think anyone intentionally wants bad CGI. But the budget was $200 million for this film.
Jesus.
Where did that go?
Oh, God. Don't know. Probably in the terrible CGI. Maybe the cost of Now and Then from the Beatles kind of made a bit of a dent in the bottom line.
All the actors that are in this film.
Yeah, but a lot of them are in it for like 3.5 seconds. But just on the CGI, I feel that, yes, it overstayed its welcome and it showed up in the wrong places in that really obtuse style when we were in the quote-unquote real world compared to the fictitious world. I think it really worked as a visual language, especially at the beginning of the movie. It made sense. I was like, okay, that gives us a bit of a difference. But then when the lines start to blur, it was front and center over and over. And that's where I think it was really, really obvious and didn't really land.
It really jarred with the cat, especially. There were some things with the cat. Even when people were holding the cat, like just a scene where they're holding the cat and you could tell it was very obviously a CGI cat. You think, why couldn't they just hold the cat?
However, I do have to call out that there is a mouth transition in this movie from Henry Cavill into Ellie, into Bryce Dallas Howard. And I think it's the best since the eye transition from young to old Rose in Titanic. It was actually magnificent.
Yeah. I think the CGI was worked on by the same companies who worked on Harry Potter. And that's where you can see it. Do you remember that god-awful scene in Harry Potter when he's on the broomstick and he's getting like thrown around, or like he's fighting the ogre or the troll or whatever it is?
Yeah, like plasticine on a broom.
Yeah, but it looks really terrible. Like they couldn't animate people. It was really bad. Same thing here. Dua Lipa's taking off on a motorbike and Jesus, it looks awful.
Yes, it's like a rag doll being thrown around on a bike. Because she's not in the movie for very long. And she's in it even less because it's not actually her on the bike most of the time.
Yes. I want to shed some light on the action and choreography, why it might not feel exactly like a Kingsman film or something. Did you feel it was as tight as the Kingsman films?
No, it wasn't as tight. It wasn't as exciting action as Kingsman for me.
Matthew Vaughn's stunt coordinator, Brad Allen, who has worked on all his films and worked on some Jackie Chan films. He's very talented. Sadly, he passed away before filming, and he had begun designing the stunts for this film, and it was left to his colleagues to finish what he started and design the rest. So there probably is a disconnect there between Matthew Vaughn's previous films and this one.
That's a really sad series of events, isn't it? Someone doesn't see their work come to life.
I mean, but some of the fight sequences are really impressive, especially when you think that Henry Cavill and Sam Rockwell had to do the exact same fight on the train in exactly the same way each time at the exact same speed to make it marry together.
Yes, and in terms of where the editing worked in conjunction with that, wow, that sequence is so impressive technically because also Henry Cavill is enormous and Sam Rockwell presumably not so much. So even just the blocking, the precision around that is something to be like, look, that's impressive. That would have taken months and months of training and blocking. So that was amazing actually to see play out, to be honest.
I loved seeing Sam Rockwell do that kind of action too. I don't know if I've seen him do it very much like that to that level, but this is going to turn into the Sam Rockwell show. Hold on to your butts.
Hold on to your butts. I won't hold you back, Leigh. I won't hold you back.
Speaking of Sam Rockwell, Henry Cavill may be the stereotypical suave spy in this, but Sam Rockwell has all the charm. I had to actively stop myself from swooning into a puddle on the floor both times that I watched this film.
Ew, it's gross.
Yeah. He's an Oscar winner and he makes anything 10 times better.
He's so magnetic in this. I had some conversations with friends about it, and they reckon the whole film was completely miscast, which, you know, maybe not. But I thought Sam Rockwell was very well cast here, and he gave everything. But did you want a little tidbit from me is that beard that he dons at the beginning of the film is actually his beard, and he'd been growing it for 2 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In anticipation of this film? Or was that a COVID beard?
I think it was a COVID beard, but I'm trying to recall whether I'd seen him rocking that bad boy on his face over the last couple of years, and I can't recall. So it did look ridiculous, especially with his like long Jesus hair as well. But yeah, it was his real beard. There you go.
Thanks for that.
Welcome.
We all know I'm a huge fan of Henry Cavill. Here, as I said, he's the typical spy. He gets to play that Bond character that we all wanted for him. We all prayed for him. Now he's potentially too old for.
Yeah, I think you need to move on from the Henry Cavill Bond consideration,
let it
unfortunately.
Go. I can't let it go. I won't let it go.
Let it go, Elsa. Let it go. Can I just look the obvious? That fucking hair. My God. That is not a haircut that you're going to see injected into the streets of Melbourne. Certainly not. It's not going to be.
I don't know. Can
I have the Argylle cut? Been asked to the barber. Not at all. My friend Peter said that he looked like Uncle Fester. Look at that coat, the square shoulders, and then he almost had like Lurch's hair, and now I can't unsee it. So, yeah, you can have that one for free.
I don't know about that. I reckon we might see it walking around the streets with a bit of a mullet added, an Australian special.
Oh, please. There are some things we do well and some things we don't, and the mullet we do not do well.
It's very Eric Banner Poiter.
Yes. Oh, that's perfect.
Poiter.
Bryce
Dallas Howard, who is the central character in this film, is a seriously underrated actor. She plays it so well here, and without spoilers, there are some nuances to her performance here where you see this like subtle shift in just her eyes and a slight twitch of a muscle, and immediately you can read what's happening in her mind and on her face. I loved her performance in this.
She was great in this because she embodies very subtle but then obtuse shifts in character, and she pulls it off. She has a lot to do and a lot to work with here, and you're right, it's all in her eyes. Her character is like this reclusive spy thriller novelist, and she's married to her work. She's a cat mum, not a cat lady. Very important distinction, apparently. But you see her grow into this whole other person in this film, and it's actually quite astonishing to compare her performance at the beginning to the end. And I agree, she is a very underrated actress. I always like to see her.
Another tidbit in case people don't know this, she's Ron Howard's daughter.
There you go, Bryce Dallas Howard. It is in the name, but some
people might not know. Bryan Cranston is in this film, and he is just chewing up the scenery, over-the-top villain, having a great time.
He is so good. He's cunning, dangerous, and you feel it. There's something about his conviction when he's delivering bad guy lines and his raspy voice. And he's really, really threatening. He's great. I've just adored watching his career shift from the bumbling dad in Malcolm in the Middle to then, Breaking Bad, and then now he's kicking all his roles out of the park. I love to see him as a bad guy especially.
He's not so scary as Walter from Breaking Bad in this one. He's a bit more campy villain.
Oh, definitely.
Bond villain.
Yes. Campy Bond villain vibes for sure.
And then you've got Catherine O'Hara, who we love in everything, and she is Ellie's mother in this film.
Yeah, a bit of a smothering mother, controlling, supportive, but wants, Ellie to consider what she's suggesting. Very thoughtful mum, but there's some really surprising aspects of her character and then also her performance that is great. She just balances like humor, drama, and menace so well. It's a really, really delicate balance to get right, but she's such a talented actress that, you can just trust her with delivering that.
Can I ask you about Sam Rockwell and Bryce Dallas Howard's chemistry? I've seen a lot of sentiment that they have no chemistry. I thought they were fantastic together.
It depends how you interpret the word chemistry. I think they were great on-screen partners, sort of the buddy cop sort of vibe. But then when you're talking about chemistry when it comes to a deeper relationship. I didn't feel the connect that maybe you had there.
Really? Oh, I thought they were so good together. I told you I was a puddle on the floor. Sam Rockwell.
Clean up on aisle 1.
My stars. Somebody hand me my fan.
I do declare it's getting awfully warm in here.
Exactly. Oh, dear. Is there anyone else you want to talk about from this stacked cast? I mean, Ariana DeBose, she's not in it for very long either.
No.
But she's so good as well.
Yeah, John Cena, the muscle with brains. I do want to call out Dua Lipa. And this was the beginning of the end for me because I found her really, really short performance the most interesting thing of the film. She just pulled off that.
She was very good.
That glamorous mystery in playing a bad guy. And despite her being Harry Potter on a broomstick on a motorbike towards the end, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see more of her character. And unfortunately, that's not how it played out. So when your favorite character and performance of the film comes and goes, and then there's still 2 hours, 15 minutes left, it's like, well, what else is there to say?
And you would think technology would have come a bit further from the first Harry Potter films by now. What was that, 20 odd years ago?
Yeah, 2001 was the first Harry Potter. There's still much to learn in the CGI space, it seems.
I mean, I couldn't do what they do, so I should probably shut my mouth.
Well, true, yes. Credit where credit's due. I guess put us in front of a CGI computer, whatever it's called. I'm not sure we'd get a great result.
Get stick figures.
Get stick figures. Even my stick figures don't look like stick figures. I tell you what, I cannot draw for shit. It's not a skill of mine.
Yeah, me either.
All right, Leigh, what do you reckon? Should we wrap up and deliver our rating for Argylle for our listener?
Let's do it. How about you go first, Tim?
Okay, sure. You basically want to end on a more positive note here. I can pick up what you're putting down. Okay.
You know me so well.
And that's fine. We'll leave with something nicer than what I'm about to throw down. I can't remember the last time I was this bored in a movie. Argylle did almost nothing for me, but I would be lying if I said I didn't enjoy some elements of the distinct style and unabashed flair of director Matthew Vaughn, which excited me from time to time. A stacked cast who didn't do a lot, the trailer was better than the film, and marketed such a different product you will either love or hate what you're walking into and then out of. I'm going to rate Argylle 1.5 popcorn kernels.
Tim, that's a bit harsh.
Well, I think I made that clear at the top of the episode.
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Well, Argylle is a bold, fun, silly spy romp that is exactly Matthew Vaughn. And if you aren't sure whether you like his style of tongue-in-cheek popcorn flick filmmaking, then this one probably won't be for you. If you can roll with the twists and turns and laugh along with the outrageous flourishes, then you will have a blast. A colourful, over-the-top, twist and crush time. Come back and see us after you've watched the film to get that one.
Yeah, I see what you did there.
I'm giving Argylle 3.5 popcorn kernels out of 5.
There you go, friends. Now, Argylle is in Australian cinemas from February 1, so go check it out and find out whether you're more on Leigh's side or my side. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
And you can watch our interview with director Matthew Vaughn over on YouTube now.
Thank you so much, friends. And as always, thank you so much for listening.
We'll catch you next time.
We have a website, popcornpodcast.com. Make sure you check it out. We've got all our episodes up there for you.
If you'd like to get to know us a little better, there's an About Us section and we run ticket giveaways, so keep an eye on the website for more information.